Hey, I'm Michael Trenz. Entrepreneur in Action is where we dive into the lives of entrepreneurs who master the 4 F's: finance, fitness, family, and fun. Our mission, help you thrive in business and life. Today's guest is Kevin Palmieri of Next Level University podcast. Kevin has done over 1,700 episodes, including tips and strategies to level up in love, life, health, and wealth. I think you're going to love it. Welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. Welcome, Kevin. Tell us about your business. Tell us about your podcast.
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, when I was probably 25 or 26, I was interviewed on a YouTube channel. And it was like an hour and a half interview. It was about fitness. It was about mindset. It was about discipline. And at the end of it, I said to one of my friends, I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. Imagine how cool that would be if you could do that for a living. And my buddy said, well, there's people out there that do. So shortly thereafter, I started a podcast called the Hyper Conscious Podcast. And my goal was to have deep conversations with deep people. And then I ended up falling in love with podcasting, falling out of love with my job. I ended up going through a lot of mental health stuff, sitting on the edge of a bed, contemplating suicide. It was a whole thing. And then I realized that my goal, my purpose, the thing that I want to do is I want to be the type of person that I needed when I was younger, that I needed when I was trying to grow and trying to evolve. So here we are 7 years later. We do an episode every day, and we're focused, like you said, on holistic self-improvement. So helping people level up their life, their love, their health, and their wealth, because you deserve to be a well-rounded human being who has well-rounded human being results.
That's amazing.
I appreciate it.
That's really awesome. How do you feel at this point? You're 7 years in. What drives you today, right? You have projects like take up so much of our lives, right? And our lives change as we go. So that's my first question for you is like, how do you keep that drive? What gets you up and moving on your podcast every day?
The ultimate goal is to have the most successful self-improvement company on the planet. So we're not even close to where we need to be. 1,700 episodes is a lot. It's really good. And we've made money as a business, and that's all really good. But we have a long, long, long way to go. So that's a big piece of it, is the goals that we have set will never really, truly accomplish. So we're always going to be in pursuit of that, in pursuit of our own potential. But transparently, one of the big things that gets me going is I remember what it was like to be miserable. And I remember what it was like to be unfulfilled and feel like I hated my job and count down the minutes on the clock. I remember what that was like. And I feel very, very grateful that I get the opportunity to do what I love every single day. I feel so very grateful. So a big piece of it is what we're aspiring towards in the future is something that we're never really going to accomplish. That's part one. Part two, I'm the most fulfilled I've ever been. And that's a really good suggestion to me that I'm going in the right direction. And number three, at one point, 7 years ago, this was quite literally a dream for me. So I am living the dream. I said that in the preamble, living the dream. Some days the dream has nightmares. But for the most part, the nightmares I have today are way better than the dreams I used to have. And I think that's a really good measure of progress and success for me.
Yeah. So tell me about that energy. Like I feel like what I'm hearing from you is that your energy, feels like it's vastly different from the place that you started from, right? You started from a place where you weren't feeling high energy. You weren't feeling those good feelings that we all want to feel. So tell me about that transformation of your energy. What got you unstuck? And then what does that look like for people when they get themselves unstuck towards feeling like you're living your life's purpose or your dream?
Yeah, it's a really challenging thing to answer because for me, when I was 26, I determined in my mind that if I made $100,000 at 26, I would be happy. And that would be it, Michael. I just need to make six figures and that's going to be fine. So I ended up making $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. And I still was miserable. My bank account was better. So anybody who says money can't buy happiness, I agree, but money can buy opportunities and it can buy choices and it can buy certainty. I'm not saying it can buy happiness. So I felt more secure than I had, but I was super insecure. I had very low self-worth, very low self-belief. I was terrible at setting boundaries. I was directionless. I had no idea why I was doing the things that I was doing. The thing that changed my life was diving into self-improvement and diving into self-awareness specifically. I didn't understand that one of the reasons I was feeling insecure wasn't necessarily the things that I was going through that month or that year. A lot of it was stemming from childhood things that happened that I never faced. Interesting. I didn't realize that was how it worked. Wait, the way I was raised can affect the way I'm living right now? What? There's no way. That doesn't even sound real. Very real. All right, cool. So I went and explored that. But then I started reading books and learning and watching TED Talks. And I think the simplest answer is, one, I feel like I'm doing something that is greater than me. It's not about Kev. It's not about me. It's not about my business partner. It's about impact. How do we impact as many people as possible? That's one thing. I'm growing and contributing towards something that I will never actually accomplish. So it becomes this beautiful mission of growth that doesn't have an end date. I'm not going to retire. I'm never going to sell the business. I don't care. You can offer me $1 trillion. I'm not interested. That's not why I started. I started this because I love it. I started this because I'm fulfilled by it. I needed to figure out how to stay in the pool long enough to learn how to swim. And I think that's one of the reasons I have the energy and the perspective I do today is a lot of us jump into, I say we have our P's in the wrong order. I used to find something that was profitable and then try to convince myself I was passionate about it. I love this job. This job is great. No, I like the money. I like the money. With podcasting, I started this because it felt like I had a passion for it. It felt like there was some impact. It felt like this could be a piece of my purpose. And then I figured out if I could make this profitable, my life would be the best. It would be amazing. So I think one of the reasons is I genuinely am so fulfilled. I don't Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't care. It's all the same. I love Mondays as much as I love Saturdays and Sundays. That's a big piece of it. I think the other piece is I'm so expressed because I get the opportunity to do this every day. I'm so expressed as a human being. I get to talk for a living. That's amazing. So that's a big piece of it. And I am privileged enough to be able to design my life in the way I want. That's a huge piece of it too. Now, I understand not everybody has that privilege or opportunity yet, but in the beginning, I started by tracking habits to make sure I was doing the right things. So let me learn for 15 minutes a day. Let's see what that can do. Let me track my finances. That's probably important. Let me move my body for 30 minutes a day. That's probably important. So I think what you're seeing now is just a culmination of me feeling like I've poured into myself. So I actually somewhat feel valuable now for the first time ever. And other people recognize the value, which is interesting. So like that increases the energy. So it's this very unique mixture of self-improvement, self-awareness, aiming for fulfillment over momentary happiness or pleasure, and ultimately setting a goal that I will never accomplish, but it will be hugely beneficial to the person that I must become just to stay on the path of pursuit for long enough. I don't know if that answered any of the question, but that's where I was going when you asked.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I'm hearing is a goal that you will never accomplish. Tell me more about that. What is the goal you'll never accomplish that you're pursuing?
To have the most impactful self-improvement brand in history. We're not going to get a trophy that says that. Like, hey, you're the most successful self-improvement brand in history. Here's a trophy. It's more about doing something that has never really, really been done before. And that's why it's so hard, because the 1,760 whatever episodes, they're just a byproduct of the goal. I didn't set out and say I want to do 1,767 episodes. I didn't even know we could. I didn't even know that was possible for us. But that became a part of the goal. My marriage, in a lot of ways, is a unique, beneficial byproduct of the goal. If I'm going to have the most impactful self-improvement company, I have to be a really good partner, because our company is about life, love, health, and wealth. So everything I do in my relationship is different now. Fitness, I have a self-improvement brand. I better be getting my butt to the gym, even though I don't want to, even though I don't want to track that calorie or whatever it is. So it's this, sometimes I think of it like this. Professional athletes are focused on winning trophies and winning awards and playing really well and getting MVP and getting that next contract. But it's weird that when professional athletes stop playing the game, a lot of them don't continue to stay in shape. And it doesn't seem like they're hungry for the stuff that they used to be. I don't think a lot of them are saying, I want to be the best to ever play my position. I think they're thinking more on the day-to-day. I think Tom Brady's a really good example. I'm from New England, so we had the benefit of having him in our corner for a long time. I think he probably wanted to be the best ever. And I think that's why that's the reason he showed up in the ways that he did. And he's still in really good shape. He still takes care of his body. He still takes care of his mind. For him, it wasn't just about the game. It was about who must I become in order to accomplish any of the goals that I have set out for. And I can't take credit for this, Michael. My business partner has a lot to do with this. He's a visionary genius who's thinking decades and decades into the future. I'm sure you can tell from my energy that is not the way I'm wired. I'm more an emotional, emotional intelligence, vibe, feel people out kind of person. But yeah, that's the ultimate thought. We're never really going to get a trophy that says we did what we said we wanted to do, which is a really good thing because we'll just keep growing forever. But the growth has to be fulfilling, because if not, you're going to suffer for something that you are never going to ultimately get. And I think that's more a recipe for suffering than it is growth.
So what I like about what I'm hearing from you, a lot of things. But one of the things that stands out to me is you're talking about the umbrella of having this huge goal, right? That you'll never satisfy because it's not satisfiable. There is no trophy that says you've got the best brand, the best podcast, the best self-help, brand ever, right? There is no trophy. So it's there's a nebulousness to that goal, right? But the word best is meaningful to us, right? And the meaning that I hear you saying that you're taking from the word best is allowing you to level up in all areas of your life. So you're using the word best to improve yourself overall, which I think is a really wonderful way to create terrific outcomes for yourself. It's interesting for me to hear this from you because I feel like my path, there's some similarities with my path as well. And one thing you mentioned is that you have partnerships and that you have to show up as the best for your partnerships, including your business partner and including your wife, right? So tell me about some of that. Tell me about how you've leveled up from just being, right, yourself without the partnerships to what did it take for you to level up and become someone who could attract and retain those partnerships, long-term partnerships with your business partner who's thinking for decades, and of course with your wife, who's also a partnership for decades.
I love the fact that you said attract and sustain. Attract and sustain. I love that because it's not just about attracting, it's about sustaining. We attract a lot of opportunities into our lives. We don't, unfortunately, sustain many of them, myself included. Man, my business partner and I went to middle school and high school together. So we knew each other. And we have a bit of a through line. His father passed away in a car accident when he was 2. My dad left, and I didn't know my dad, and I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. So we have that childhood wound of growing up without positive male role models. Probably not a coincidence that that's one of the things that we aspire to. The thing that has really, really helped is trying to be as humble as humanly possible to the fact that I don't know everything. I know less than I actually know. Like there's more out there that I don't know than I actually do know. There's so much. So I'm always trying to be curious and I'm trying to understand that I don't know everything and there's room for growth. I think that's always valuable in relationships. There's nothing worse than talking to somebody who thinks they have all the answers all the time. It's a one-way conversation that's filled with dead ends. It's just really, really challenging. So that's always been very, very big to me. My relationship with Alan is very unique because I understand, Michael, this is going to sound really weird. I understand that I'm lucky to have a business partner like him, and I'm willing to give him all of the credit he deserves, even if it sucks for me in the moment. So for a long time, when I started the podcast, and then Alan came aboard, I used to think that I had to have all the answers. And I used to think that people had to think I did this. I was the brains of the operation. I was the one who did it all. Eventually, and the thing that has helped Alan and I's relationship the most is I have just allowed him to lean into his greatness. When most of the other people he's worked with have been terrified of his greatness because that means you're going to get left behind. Yeah, I understand why it feels that way, but by me saying, brother, you're safe to grow, you're safe to be yourself, I will never stop growing. But I do need you to know that you're always going to be way smarter than I am, and you are just more capable than I am. I'm never going anywhere. I'm never going to villainize you for being better at these things, just like you're not going to villainize me for being better at these things. It's just been living in the truth. That's really all it's been, is we're not hiding. I'm not the CEO for a reason. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I shouldn't be the CEO. He's been the CEO of companies. He should be the CEO. That's why our relationship works. I would rather be successful than be right. I don't have to be right. I would rather be successful than be the number one. I don't care. I'm a good number 2. Awesome. I'll do that. So with Alan, I think it's really been that. It's unleashed the pieces of him that other people have kept caged, because if he grows too much, I'm going to get left behind. That's not true. That's not true. That's only true if I stop growing or I villainize his growth. So that's that. With my wife, it's different because we're not business partners and she does not aspire to that in any level, no capacity. With her, I have a deep belief that my relationship is only going to grow to the level that the partners in the relationship grow. So that's been a really big thing for me, is the growth that I'm doing outside of my relationship is directly collaborating inside, and same for my wife. I think for the intimate relationship, it's been more figuring out what are her traumas and triggers and childhood experiences and what are mine, and then how are they showing up in our relationship today, and then how can we work through them together. But that relies on a bedrock of trust, a bedrock of empathetic communication, and I would say courage. Having real, authentic, loving, scary conversations takes a lot of courage, but that's also where a lot of the growth is. I'm working really diligently on that. I'm not great at giving feedback, hard feedback. I'll give you all the positive feedback. Michael, if you said, hey, give me the 5 things that went well, I got you. But if you say, give me 3 improvement points, it's like, no, you did fine, man. Don't worry about it. You don't need the improvement points. So that's something I'm working on, and I'm working on that in my relationship too. So I would say those are the things that have benefited myself, but also being in the relationships that I've been in over the last 5 years for my wife and 7 years.
So you mentioned the direct feedback part, right?
Yeah.
Which is something I think everybody struggles with, right? I'm even challenged by this in my own life today, right? It's something that I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I was thinking about, a situation that, my wife and I have, we've decided to discuss and, work on it together, which is basically there's a guy who we invited to our wedding and now he's like, hey, asking her and not me, want to go to a concert without your husband? And it's like, dude, how am I, there are ways that I could talk to him directly, right? And I could say, knock it off. I don't like that. This is not respectful to our marriage. This is not respectful to our relationship, right? But instead of just jumping on that myself, the way that we have decided to move forward is that we're gonna be a team in everything, right? We're gonna be a team in this too, So I wrote a draft and I sent it to her and I said, what do you think? Like as a text message, because I don't know when I'm going to see the guy. It's not like I bump into him every other day, but I want to get this done, So we found a way to team up. And so, that's just, to me, it's like, that's what this thing is. This is us being a team always, right? And there's a case to say like, oh, like, one person takes action, one person doesn't. Maybe that's a way to go in things. But what I'm hearing from you is that you're really teaming up, right? You're teaming up in your podcast. You're teaming up in your marriage, and there's that saying, you go faster by yourself, but you go farther as a team.
100%.
So tell me a little bit about like how you might handle situations, right? So I just presented you like with a situation that I've experienced in my life. Like, what if something like that were to happen to you? Like how might you handle this, in your relationship with your wife,
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I would probably ask, how do you want to handle it? Do you feel like this is something that you want to send the message because this person messaged you and it's important to set the boundary? Or do you feel like I should come in and I should be the one to send the message? It really depends, because the last thing I want is my wife to think I'm trying to save her, that she can't handle it. Like, that's a big thing. Like, I can take care of myself. I can do it. Okay, cool. So yeah, it would be that. Ultimately, we both want the same result. If we believe that this was not respectful to our marriage and this person might be doing something shady, hypothetically, we don't want that. That is not what we aspire to. Cool. What is your ideal path? We'd go this way. Okay. What is my ideal path? Well, we go this way. Okay. Are there any benefits that you see from my ideal path that you'd like to bring over to yours? Yes. Are there any I see that I'd like to bring over to mine? Yes. Cool. Let's do that. That's probably how I would approach it. A really good example of how I quote unquote problem solve. So we have in our business, we have a social media team. So we have clients and we take care of their social media. And I got a message from a client today and he said, hey, Kev, just a heads up, not a huge deal, but there's something spelled wrong on one of these posts. And you know how it is, the internet, any reason for somebody to tear us apart, they're going to find it. And this is a reason. Can we take care of this? Thank you so much. So I messaged the team and I said, hey, we have a little bit of an issue here. The person who the issue happened to is a very kind human, super supportive, super understanding. We're not in trouble, but we have to have higher standards than the client does. So we have to have higher standards for what we put out the door than the client does, because that's why they're hiring us. That's what we're here for. So I said to the person who made the mistake, I said, I do not want you to beat yourself up more than you already are going to. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, can we identify where the problem came from as a team? Can we identify what the solution is? And then can we figure out what a couple lessons are from this issue? And it was a beautiful little dialogue that went on. And one of the people in the team said, I love how you always bring humor into your problem solving. Because as I said, I'm a professional mistake maker. So I'm never going to shame anybody in this team for making mistakes. I will make more mistakes than you do. It's just going to happen. I care more about the lessons than the mistakes. So that's just an example of, I never liked getting yelled at when I made mistakes. That didn't make me want to make mistakes less. It made me more scared to make mistakes. And I think there's a difference. I would rather someone say, I want to do well because that's who I am, not I want to do well because I'm afraid of not doing well. I think those are two very different lives, two very different cultures, and two very different teams. So I think for me, it's usually about communication, making people feel seen, heard, understood, and valued, and then ultimately getting to whatever the collaborative best choice is.
So I really like the fact that your team, felt uplifted through the process of you talking about like a problem that a client had, right? So you're really hearing the client. This is important. The client needs to feel heard, right? So that they can feel like they want to continue in the relationship, right? Because they feel valued. They know that their words are valued. And then the team also, right? The team also feels valued because you presented them, and this was the framework that I really liked that I heard from you, was where we're at, where we want to be, and then how do we get there, right? And you're outsourcing those ideas from the team, right? It's a conversation, So I really like what I'm hearing there. And so, like when you're doing your podcast, right? So I'm assuming that this is part of the business side that is somehow related to the podcast. Tell me about working with your teams, with your clients, and how is that related on the business side with your podcast?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to do an episode. So I have two podcasts. I have a podcast about podcasts also. So there's a lot going on over here in the neck of the woods. I was thinking of this today, Michael. I'm going to do a podcast episode on my podcast about podcasts about when you start a digital brand, a lot of the opportunity is the exposure, not the conversion. And I'll explain that here. So for us, we started a podcast because we wanted to add value to people's lives. I had no idea that there was monetization points. I didn't know how to monetize. I wasn't doing this to start a business. Well, I left my job and I put everything that I needed to put on credit cards. So I ended up $40,000 in credit card debt trying to fund this dream. So I said to my business partner, I have to find a way to start making money. And he said, well, you should start coaching for free. And I said, well, I don't think you heard what I said. I have to start making money. And he said, well, Kev, you've never coached before. I think it would be beneficial because you'll build belief and you'll build reps and you'll figure out what works and what doesn't. Well, what am I going to coach on? Well, our podcast is on self-improvement. We could coach our audience on how to get to the next level, how to track habits, how to work through relationship stuff, how to be the best version of you. Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. So that's how the business actually went from just being a podcast that people listen to an opportunity for deeper growth is we started coaching people. Then eventually we figured out, well, we could do group coaching where we can help people for a cheaper rate. It wasn't for us so we could make more money. It was we can help more people at an affordable rate than one-on-one. Awesome. Cool. Then eventually somebody asked me how to do podcast stuff. So they said, well, how do you produce an episode? How do you do the audio stuff, the video stuff? So then we ended up opening a branch that it's called Next Level Podcast Solutions now. And we've served hundreds of clients. Never knew that was going to happen. That was a unique benefit. So in the beginning, it was all about adding value and building a brand. And then eventually when we started to see the patterns of, okay, well, our listeners are struggling with these things. We can coach them on how to get through those. Okay, awesome. Then when we started working with podcasters are struggling with these things. And we've already systematized those. Oh, we can help them with that. Awesome. So what started off as a podcast about self-improvement has now become a brand about self-improvement. But now there's this podcast department where we can help you with that, and a social media department, and a web department, and we have products and services, and we have an app. And it ultimately became, if we were to list out the top 25 problems that we have been able to solve for ourselves over the last 7 years, how many of those have we systematized? 14 of them. Awesome. Could we do that for other people? Yes. Cool. Let's figure out where the demand comes from that, and then let's start that. And that's what allows us to do an episode every day. There's team members working on stuff right now that gives me the privilege and opportunity to be out here. And I always try to shout out the team because you're never going to see them because they don't do podcasts like this. But they're behind the scenes making it possible for me and Alan to do the things that we do. But that wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the business. And it's this beautiful thing of, I'm going to be able to produce a lot of content that's hopefully super valuable because there's a business allowing us to do that behind the scenes. And it's become this beautiful kind of infinity symbol where things pour into one another.
So how do you think about those, either like maybe buckets or as umbrellas over the company? Like, how do you, it sounds like just what I'm hearing is there's a podcast side, and then there is a self-help side, and there's also which that might be the same as the podcast. Sorry. So there's a self-help podcast, right? Which is where you started. And then there's a podcasting that teaches other podcasters, which seems to be, from what I'm hearing, that's led to possibly what you could call marketing services.
Yep.
But I want to hear your words for it. Like, how do you think of your business at the highest level?
Man, these are great questions. We are a self-improvement company. Podcast is a piece of the company. Habit tracking software that we have is a piece of the company. The journal is a piece of the company. Those are all pieces of the company, but our brand is holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. That is our overall brand. Under that brand, we have a podcast solutions department based on the fact that one of the things that we had the most credibility in the fastest was podcast. One of the hardest things in the world is to build perception around your expertise. People just started coming to me for podcast stuff, so that just made it go faster. So yeah, it's really that. It's everything for me is about podcasting. Everything for Alan is about business. So Alan has a podcast about business outside of the podcast about self-improvement. He coaches people on self-improvement, but he's really leaning into business coaching with high-level business owners. So you can see that I am becoming the podcast guy who will always have hopefully a pretty deep base in self-improvement, since I do an episode on it every day. Alan is transitioning into the business guy who's always going to have a very deep, concrete foundation on self-improvement because he talks about it every day, because we have the brand credibility now to actually get clients in those arenas. Where in the beginning, I know a lot of podcasters who I talk to who say, I want to coach podcasters. It's like, I love you, and I mean this with all the love in the world. You haven't achieved the result that they desire yet. So why would they work with you? Oh, okay. So you go do 100 episodes, 200 episodes, and just build up that credibility. So it's really that. I'm trying to be the podcast guy more now. And it took me years to figure that out. I never liked coaching, but it wasn't that I didn't like coaching. It's just, I'm not a self-improvement coach. That's not it for me. I'm a podcast coach. That feels right. Alan's never coached anybody on podcasting. He's a business coach, and he's really good at self-improvement coaching too. But what he is the best in the world at, and eventually will be, hopefully, is business coaching. He's really good at business coaching. So you can see how in the beginning it was, we did what we had to do in order to make this work. Then things were presented to us and things became clearer over time and over time and over time. And now we get the opportunity to lean more into we're doing what we aspire to do. So that would be my generalization of the whole thing.
What is podcast coaching?
It's just like any other coaching. So I have a lot of people that reach out to me and say, I started a podcast. I have this mission, this purpose, this passion, and I can't wait to share it with the world. And then I know people are going to start reaching out and giving me money, right? No, that's not how it works. So podcast coaching is really, I help people strategize. I help people name their shows, whatever it might be, to ultimately get whatever result it is that they're chasing. More listens, more opportunity, more money, whatever it is. And then we have a production company that helps people with the technological stuff that people don't want to deal with. So that's really what it is for me is, so what are you struggling with as a podcaster? And how can I add value using the experience that I have, the failures that I have accrued over the years, and the lessons that have come from those failures, just like anything else. When you go to a personal trainer, they tend to know more about the body and physiology and all that, or you just want the accountability. I guess that's kind of a piece of it too. That is me in the podcasting space.
So as a podcast coach, you're speaking with people one-on-one, and you're able to, unlike with an actual podcast episode where you're speaking maybe more to a general audience, although people can feel like it's speaking to them directly, they don't get to do that real deep dive into their own personal, actual path, where they're at now, using the framework you said earlier, where they're at now, where they want to go, and then figuring out together with you how to get there. And you bring the credibility, having done podcasting for 7 years, and having over 1,700 episodes already published and live on YouTube for them to see, and other platforms, I assume, as well. So that's what I heard earlier you were saying, right? This credibility that came so easily to you for podcasting and podcast coaching, right? In that realm, because they can see it. And I really caught that when you mentioned that earlier, like it's easy for people to see that you have achieved this, right? Like there is no trophy that best podcaster ever, right? But you're embodying, right, your goals, right? And people can then see the podcast that you create because it's in a list form or it's in a grid that they can see it on the platform. But the other aspect of the business is more intangible, right? The self-help, right? The coaching one-on-one self-help or the group coaching self-help. How did you build that credibility there? Because it's not like these self-help, I'm imagining those self-help episodes don't become podcast episodes. They're private one-on-one sessions, I'm assuming. And correct me if I'm wrong.
The coaching calls?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are all private.
Yeah. So how do people get that same, how did you build that level of credibility without people being able to see it in the same way that they can see the podcast episodes?
Yeah. Honestly, in the beginning, this is the interesting piece. In the beginning, I wasn't looking for credibility, so I think people were in for personality. And Michael, I never claimed, for the first year at least, probably 2, I didn't claim to know anything. I'm not telling you to listen because I'm going to teach you anything. We're going to have deep conversations with deep people, and they're going to teach you the stuff. So that was a big piece of it in the beginning for me. Is I'm going to host it, but I don't really know who I am or what I know yet. So I'm going to focus on trying to figure out my personality and all that. The thing that I think set us apart, that gave us a lot of credibility, was the fact that 2017, 2018, they were different times. So podcasting was different than it is today. But when people would share our content on social media, so let's say you shared a clip from our podcast, tagged me on Instagram, I would reach out to you and say, Michael, thank you so very much for sharing this. I appreciate it. I would love to get to know you at a deeper level to figure out what you're going through so I can add more value on the podcast. And people would say, okay, what does that look like? This is my phone number. Text me whenever. Are you open to hopping on a FaceTime? This was before I was using Zoom. I didn't know Zoom existed. And most people said yes. So I would just hop on FaceTime and say, okay, what's your relationship like? What was your upbringing like? If you're willing to be vulnerable and very courageous, what are your biggest struggles? What are your biggest strengths? And then I would just go back to Alan and say, all right, this is what I learned today. And that became the basis of everything that we talked about. So that was a really big piece, was what we lack in numbers, we make up for in human connection and curiosity and consistency. Those were always really there. The other thing that was very interesting from the beginning was, as a tattooed bodybuilder who loves mixed martial arts and combat sports, I thought we were going to attract a male audience. Most of the people I was doing these calls with were female. That created some level of credibility, I think, for us, because although I shudder when I listen back because I can feel my ego, I think we had less ego than your other average 28-year-old men talking about self-improvement. And I think the audience really connected with that. And it wasn't about credibility. I think credibility is exclusivity. When you're credible, you're exclusive. For us, it was about welcoming. So it was actually inclusive. It wasn't credibility for us. It was safety to come into the community that I think set us apart in the very beginning. So we didn't really have any credibility, I don't think, until we started getting bigger guests on. And then people probably thought, oh, wow, these guys are onto something. But I would say it wasn't a focus of credibility or exclusivity. It was a focus on how do we be as inclusive as humanly possible by going above and beyond to humanize ourselves and humanize the brand. Because honestly, that's really who we were, and especially who I was at the time. So I would say that. I think that's kind of the thing that springboarded us more than anything.
So, having less ego than some of the other men,
hopefully, Michael,
hopefully less ego, hopefully more openness is what I'm hearing, right? So I feel like one of the superpowers of a podcast is that it's an invitation, right? An interview podcast. The currency is the invitation, just as you and I, worked together to create this episode, right? That was the currency. Do you accept my invitation to be on my show? Yes, I accept your invitation, and that's, there's a generosity there and a respect there that is a wonderful thing, and I appreciate you so much for coming on the show today, and so I really feel that that's intrinsic to the interview format podcast. And so I think that already lends itself to some of the things that you've expressed, are part of the growth path, right? Having less ego. So tell me more about your path to having less ego. What does that look like for you? Where did you start from? What's your goal and how'd you get there?
Yeah. That's a great question. Great question. I don't know if that was ever a goal of mine. It's hard because I don't think I ever had like an outwardly arrogant ego because I was deeply insecure. So for me, it was more people would look at me and see somebody who is quote unquote successful and see somebody who was in really good shape and see somebody who had a beautiful girlfriend or partner, nice car, seemingly crushing life. I think my ego was, how do I stay safe and hide behind this falsity that I've created? When I listen back to the podcast in the early days, I'm louder. I don't enunciate at all. And I think that comes with reps, right? I've done a lot more reps. But I can tell that I'm trying to mask lack of awareness, certainty, and accuracy with ego. I can tell there's ego protecting me. I can feel it when I listen back. I don't know if anybody else ever could, but one of the things that I realized pretty early was I am wildly insecure. If I'm being honest with myself, I remember having this thought. If I'm being honest with myself, I am wildly insecure. I was at my business partner and I were speaking in Florida because we had a friend who had a big brand and we were going to host an event together. Awesome. And we were in the gym. And in the gym, I am 10 out of 10 confident. This is my place. I'm the man in the gym. This is my spot. I've spent so much time here, confident. But when we sat down after the workout and we started talking about business, I remember internally I villainized my business partner and the guy we were with of like, you guys are so freaking arrogant with the way you talk about business. And I said, whoa. Is this a me thing or is this a them thing? And I sat with that. And what I realized was it was a me thing. That began the piece of awareness of every time I ego up, I'm not living in the truth. And trust me, I still have my moments. I'm far from perfect. But every time I ego up, I'm not living in the truth and I'm missing out on an opportunity for more connection, for more opportunity, for more success, for more fulfillment, whatever it is. So that became the journey for me is, look, I'm just going to admit when I'm insecure. Because my identity used to be jacked, confident. What I tried to then do was my identity is courageous, vulnerable, and admits when he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. And so just to connect it, was it last night? A couple nights ago, we recorded an episode. I don't think it's live yet. And Alan said something when we were signing off. He said, if you need any help with this, or this, reach out to Alan, reach out to me or Kev. And I said, don't reach out to Kev, reach out to Alan. Alan's way better at that than I am. That's now my identity. That's who I am on the podcast. Alan is way smarter than me. He studied way harder than me. I'm way funnier than him, and I'm way more relatable. Those are the things that I was so afraid of in the beginning. So I put those behind me. I remember another time that really crossed the chasm for me. Do you know who Stephen Kotler is?
No, the name's not
familiar. He wrote a book called The Art of Impossible, where he studied people who have done seemingly impossible things and kind of reverse engineered how that happened. We got the opportunity to interview him. And it was like the first time I recognized that Alan was in his element with this guy, and they were just like two peas in a pod. And I became internally the guy who didn't know what I was talking about, but I was going to try to be funny and just own it. That was such an unlock for me that day because I realized that most of what I was trying to be was based on my own view of myself, not anybody else's. And then it just started to try to unravel that a little bit more. But that connects to what we were talking about earlier of one of the best things that's happened to me is having a business partner who makes me feel terrible about myself because it's not his fault. He's not doing it. That's just him. He's a wonderful human. He has a massive heart, one of the biggest hearts ever. He's just triggering because he's really good at everything. He's really smart and he's just so confident. That polarity for me has forced me to grow so much. And it's amazing. I wouldn't be the man I am without that. But I had to uncondition a lot of the insecurities over time. For me, ego is a mask for insecurity. That's usually how it goes for me. I don't tear people down. I want people to win. But when I get insecure, that's when I put it up and say, look at me, I'm this. If I just admit that I'm insecure, I don't have to ego up. And I'm blessed that I have people around me that support that, right? The community, the team, my wife, my business partner, my friends. Nobody's ever going to shame me for feeling insecure. Ever. If they do, they're not going to be in my life for very long because that's not what I'm about. So that's become a very big piece of it too.
So how do you recognize? What's the trimmed wire? What flips the needle or flips the switch so that you can somehow from inside, you can read the ingredients label from inside the bottle and go, hey, I'm in my ego right now. How does that show up for you so that you can recognize it?
I stop listening and I start responding. It happened with Alan and I yesterday with a conversation. He wasn't even finished his sentence yet. He was about to finish. And I already had my rebuttal. It wasn't like I wasn't yelling. We weren't yelling or anything, but it was like, no, Alan, we can't do that because of this. If it's a really good, balanced perspective for me, I'll listen. I'll take a second and sit with what I just heard, and then I'll run it through the calculator and see what comes up, and then I'll respond. When I'm in ego, that it doesn't happen. That middle piece does not happen. I call it pinball. Pinball for me is you never say the first thing that comes to your mind. You let it bounce off some things first to knock off some of the dust and the garbage and the pain that you're trying to throw back. When I'm not playing pinball, that's how I know I'm coming from a place of ego. 100%. If I'm offended, either I'm going to go very vulnerable or I'll have the ego. I can tell in the way that I'm posturing. I can feel the energy. If I get warm, this probably isn't going in the right direction. So yeah, a lot of it is that. It's really for me, I know I'm living in ego if I respond to respond instead of responding to collaborate. I think that's probably the best way for me to put it.
It's powerful.
So I appreciate it. That's a great question, Michael. Nobody has ever asked me that question. So I appreciate that question more than you know.
Nice. Yeah, I love what you said there, right? So you're able to be in the moment, right? When you're not in your ego, and there's, as you said, like when your business partner was having the conversation with the author of the Art of the Impossible book, right? You're like, they're having this really cool conversation. I can be a different role than I usually play.
Yes.
I don't have to be like the old role, like from when you first started podcasting, of having to know it all. And in fact, I skipped over like 3 other roles, and now I'm being, the fun guy. Yeah. I'm listening to this deep conversation, and I can be the fun guy, adding the levity to the deep conversation, so that people can, more. Yeah. What other roles could you see yourself unlocking if you could be even more in the moment?
It's kind of started to happen recently so I got a really big speaking opportunity last month. For those who might know Evan Carmichael, he's a big, huge guy in our space. He's interviewed all the greats. He's got 4 million subscribers and he's super successful. He's a friend of ours at this point, which is weird to say. Never expected that. But he said, I'm having my mastermind, my in-person mastermind in Toronto, and I'd love for you to come speak on, and you're going to like this, Michael, maybe you should have spoken, the strategy and importance of asking yourself and other people powerful questions. I feel like you could have slid right in there. If I was sick, you could have slid right in there for sure. And my initial thought was, this is horrible news. I do not want to do this. This is horrible news because I'm going to have to say yes to this, and I really don't want to do it. Ugh, brutal. So I said yes. Yes, I'd love to. I booked everything that day, so I didn't lose my courage. I told Alan to. Alan was not going to not let me do it. So the night before I was flying out, some people started to show up to the mastermind, and they were on Evan's story. And I made the mistake of looking at some of these people, and I was like, oh, these people are so successful. This is going to be a train wreck. We are in trouble. We are going to be found out, and everybody's going to know you're a freaking imposter. We're in trouble. So I fly to Toronto. I check into the Airbnb. I go to the gym. I get my workout in. Let's get centered. The next day, let me pre-frame. I spoke on the last day of the event. So I was there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I spoke on Friday. Wednesday and Thursday, I got the opportunity to be in person with all the people that I was going to be speaking to. I was just myself, and nothing special about me. I'm taking notes. I'm learning. There's nothing special about me. I'm a regular human. I'm just here to add value. We're going to see what happens. But even I would say that people would be like, oh, you're speaking on Friday. And I would say, yeah, I hope I can add some level of value. That's what I'm going for. Some people would say, oh, don't say that about yourself. That's just who I am. This is how I am. This is how I operate. So I did my speech. I wrote it out, presentation really, write it out. Cool, awesome. And I had this moment where I was getting ready to present it, where I said, Kev, just be you. Don't worry about saying the perfect word. Don't worry about having the perfect hook, just be you. The stuff is in there. You've done this thousands of times, Kev. It's all in there, but it won't be in there if you're looking elsewhere. And it was one of the best presentations I've ever given. It was awesome. It was the scariest. But then I got brought back for another presentation a couple weeks later and to more people. So I had this moment where it's oftentimes very hard for me to find flow when I am hosting something, because I'm focused on time, I'm focused on logistics, I'm focused on everything. But what I've learned from being on other podcasts and speaking is when I'm not worried about the logistics and I just go inward, I am capable of way more than I ever thought. Michael, I think this interview is a great version of that. Every question you asked pretty much has never been asked of me. I didn't have a chance to prep. And I'm not saying all my answers were perfect or super valuable. I'm not saying that. But for me, I didn't have a chance to prep. I have never met you. We had 6 seconds of pre-talk before you hit record. And now we're here. I think that's where my best stuff is. My best stuff is inside of me waiting to be pulled out. But you have to trust it and you got to get rid of the safety net. So I think for me, whatever my next version of greatness is, comes with me being more present and not prepping for intuition. Intuition is intuitive. You don't prep for intuition. Intuition is there whether you know it or not. That's what I would.
That is one of the things that I really love about this conversation and this opportunity, because before, when I did research about you, before we did hop on this call, I saw that you have done what you've said, right? You've created and published, nearly 2,000 podcast episodes at this time, from what I was able to see. And there is a tax that you have to pay to be the host of your own show, right? And I don't know, some people are familiar with the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So they produce their own show. This is what, like we produce our own podcasts, they produce their own show. Of course, it's a bigger budget. There's a lot more moving parts, more people, and they have to, they have a lot of other concerns that we don't have. But when I've heard the actors say when they go on another show, they're like, we didn't have to produce it. It's so much, it's such a weight off to just join somebody else's show and then, and be there and perform for them. And for this conversation, you didn't have to prep the questions or do the research to know what you were going to ask, right? Because it's mostly me asking you. So it's a different experience, and that is something that I was very welcoming of as we were coming into this today. So I'm glad that we've arrived at a place. One of the markers that I always look at in general in my life, but that I'm experiencing right now is, and that we're talking about in this conversation is, could I have predicted 24 hours ago where I'm going to be right now? And I always know that's a good day. If we're having this very specific conversation right now and we're in a really interesting place, and like I could not have predicted that yesterday. No way would I have known that,
right?
And so I really appreciate this moment.
Likewise, I so transparently, behind the scenes, maybe transparently is not the right context for this. At the beginning of the week, I go and I look at all the podcasts I'm on for the week, and I had trouble finding yours. And I know it's newer, and I think you have 3 episodes on YouTube. I creeped on you. I always try to do my research. And I had this moment where I was like, the thing I get from you is this confident, certain wisdom. And that's what I got. Now, did I know we were going to be here? No. But I did feel a different energy from you than I have felt from many other people. And I was very excited / a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. A little bit nervous because I think certainty can be intimidating. Certainty can be very intimidating. And if you don't know the person, it can come off in different ways. So I didn't know what to expect, but I feel the same. I appreciate the deep conversation, because as we started, I just want to have deep conversations with deep people. And this is a really good example of how that is possible.
Nice. Yeah. So let's so in this, Entrepreneur in Action, I think we're probably exploring some of the same things in our podcasts, because I know that you use love, life, health, and wealth as sort of 4 cornerstones that you give for strategies and tips to level up. And then in this podcast, I use the 4 Fs, right? Finance, fitness, family, and fun. And I'm sure there's a lot of crossover. There's also some differences there, which I think will be interesting for me to think about further. Because I hadn't thought about that yet. And I'm eager to think about that, actually. The differences between love, life, health, and wealth versus finance, fitness, family, and fun.
We don't have any fun in ours, Michael. That's the thing. There's no fun in ours.
It's not fun.
That's what life is supposed to be, right?
I think life would be
Yeah.
kind of fun,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Health is fitness, love is family, and wealth is finance. So there you could say, but I know there's subtle
Of
differences.
course, of course.
There's got to be a lot of subtle
Yeah,
differences
yeah, yeah.
in the trajectory that it takes each of us in our path there.
Yeah.
So we have talked. We introduced. And you have a range of businesses within your business. What do you think? I just want to dive a little deeper into that. Tell me, just, I'm someone new to you, right? What sets you apart? How do you approach things differently in your business?
I would say we are user focused to a detriment. So a lot of what we do is not to make our lives easier. It's genuinely to make other people's lives better. Like we give away a lot of stuff, and our pricing is the way it is, not based on that's how much money I want to make. It's just sustainable for most people. I think that's one simple one. The other thing that I think really sets us apart is we are walking the talk. If I'm going to tell you you can get better every single day, I better be producing an episode every single day. And we will never miss. I'm telling you right now, we will never miss. It won't happen. I don't care what happens. We'll find a way to get it out. That's just who we are. So that's from that front. I'll add one more. What a lot of podcasts in the self-improvement space do, they're on one of the two polarities. There's one, grind your face off and your feelings don't matter. There's the opposite polarity, which is don't worry about it, don't work that hard, and if it's meant to be, it'll be. I don't think either of those are correct. I think either of those are opportunities for seasons of life. We're very much in the middle, where I want you to love yourself, and I want you to have self-worthiness, and I want you to have all of that, and I don't want you to beat yourself up more than you already do. I don't want that. That's not sustainable, and it's not constructive. But I do want to give you a gentle kick in the butt when you need it. It's not my job to make people, or not my goal to make people feel bad about themselves. It's my goal to help people feel about themselves, just in general. Whatever the feelings are, that's where we want to start. And we try to take a very healthy approach to that, where I'm not going to tell you that if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. I think that's dumb. I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. One of. Because for me, Michael, for most of my life, I was scared of everything. My goals shouldn't scare me. You think I'm going to run towards something I'm scared of? No, that's a high achiever thing. High achievers set goals that scare them and then they go do them. I wasn't a high achiever. I didn't resonate with that. So I think we are really trying to optimize for how do we touch as many spectrums of humans as possible, not high achievers, if you don't identify as that, not super spiritual, if you don't identify as that. The podcast is for everyone. The podcast is for everyone. As long as you're into self-improvement and being humble. That's that piece. The podcasting coaching thing, I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I want to start an agency where we do production. I'm somebody who's in the trenches every single day, podcasting every single day, speaking every single day. So it's not, again, I think it's just the walk the talk thing. I'm never going to try to help you do something that I haven't already done and hopefully done fairly well at this point. That's what kind of sets us apart. I think the last thing is something highlighting happened recently. I'll keep it anonymous, but there's somebody that we look up to a lot, and they have their own certified coaching program, as many people do in our space. And one of our community members was invited to some sort of mastermind thing for free. And we know it's kind of a lead gen thing and there's going to be an upsell, and that's okay. No worries. That's kind of how it works. We're good. But this person went and they got on a one-on-one free call with a coach. And he said, I think you should really work with me because it's going to be super valuable. And it's only $8,000 for 2 months or whatever. And she said, well, I don't have $8,000. And that's like way out of my price range. And he said, well, you could always ask one of your friends or your families to take out a credit card and you could put it on that. That's where we're different. That will never happen. That is not good business. That is not being a good human. This person's not going to make that $8,000 back in 2 months of coaching with you. I'm sorry. That's what separates us. I don't want to be that. If I have to trade in who I am to be successful, I'm in the wrong space. I'm in the wrong business, and I should really figure stuff out. So that's how I think we're different in that. We're walking the talk. I want a really successful business that is actually based on adding value. I would rather somebody say no to me than say yes to me and regret it. That's the way we built our business. That's just who we are. I think that's what sets us apart. I really, really do. And again, a lot of that's Alan. Alan will not let us take shortcuts in the micro because he wants to have a very successful business eventually. That's kind of the game we're playing, is Kev. Now matters, but we can't take shortcuts and we can't do stuff that's unsustainable because that's going to affect the compounded growth. It's like, I don't know what any of that means. I do now, but I didn't know what any of that meant at the beginning. It's making sense. We're not as successful as some of these other people, but I'm willing to bet a lot of these other people aren't going to be around in 30 years. And I don't mean that from a place of ego. I don't. They just have shady practices. And we're in the space of the internet. The pizza shop down the street, if they get a hair in your food 4 times, you're going to write a bad review. And there's going to be other people who say, I don't really like hair in my food, so I might not go there. I think everything's going that direction.
I really appreciate that, right, Kevin? That's very meaningful, right? As someone, any consumer, right, or anyone who cares about other people, right? You wouldn't want your friend to go to a business where they're going to get ripped off, right? You yourself wouldn't want to go to a business where you're spending more than the value that you're able to pull out of that conversation, So I really appreciate where you guys are coming from. You need to. One of the things that I really feel is really important, and I think it is something that's a through line of this conversation, is that when you are directing yourself towards the energy that you're putting into the world, right? That orientation really matters, right? So if you allow yourself to go the course of, well, like what you said, right? There was a speech that somebody gave, right? Oh, you can't afford it? Well, one of your family members can take out a credit card, right? Like this is not meeting the customer where they're at, right? Now, some customer, they might have an extra $1,000 a week for 8 weeks. And that, in fact, that would be a great deal for them in a certain situation. If it was the right coaching, and it was the right price for them, that might be an amazing deal. But this customer was expressing, this isn't for me, and then they got kind of the hard sell, right? So that is a practice that, as you said, leads to outcomes of unhappiness, and then they're attracting unhappiness in their business, and this is not the path, right? That is a path for someone who's into self-improvement, for example, right? That's already like a schism. There's already a split, right? How can you improve yourself if they can't meet you where you're at? So what I'm hearing from you is you want to meet people where they're at. You're not trying to upsell them on something that they might not be ready for, and you're also not expecting them to be a certain personality type. Hey, you have to be the one who runs towards your fears for us to work with you, right? You said the humility is required, right? Kind of opposite of ego, right? Is on that spectrum. It's not ego, it's humility, so that you can get to a place of learning, right? So I really hear you. I really hear what you're saying. I think that's really valuable thing to bring to your audience. As you said, almost so much of your content is free, right? And then there are some people who are moved, right, from the value that they're receiving from the free content to want to move to a different relationship, which I think paid relationship in that case makes so much sense, because there is a real argument to be made. And I felt this for myself, that when you pay for information, like with your dollars, right, you value it differently than information that you got for free. You want to talk to that a little bit? Like, how's that shown up for you? What sort of changes have you seen in clients who've been paid clients, or how have you seen in your own life when you pay for information?
I got a good example. I got a good example for this, Michael. I was less than consistent in the gym at some point I think it was last year. And I was just frustrated with myself. I love the gym. Go to the gym, Kev. I know you're in a rut. I know you're overwhelmed, but you're going to be less overwhelmed if you go to the gym. It just doesn't feel that way. So I went to my wife, and I had this $100 bill on my desk. Because again, very, very similar to what you were saying, I like to surround myself with abundance. I feel like if I'm looking at a $100 bill, I'm going to feel pretty good. I'm going to feel pretty upbeat, probably be more confident. My state might be different. So I went to my wife, and I said, hey, I need you to do me a favor. And she said, yeah, what do you got? And I said, if I don't go to the gym every single day for the next 7 days, I need you to take this $100 bill, and I gave it to her. And I said, I need you to rip it up in front of me. And she said, there is no way I'm going to do that. And I said, babe, it's already done. The fact that I have the courage to give you the money means it's already done in my head. The pain of me not going is far greater than the pain of me going. It's done. And I went every single day and ended up getting my money back. It worked so well that I stopped doing it, right? It's one of those things. But yeah, we've seen that time and time again with clients. In the beginning, when we didn't have the same level of demand, we might give something away. okay, you know what? I'll do a free call, or I'll do this, or I'll do this. And a lot of times people wouldn't show up. You give somebody a free call or a free spot to group coaching, and they would just stop showing up because there's no investment. There's no accountability. So that is something we have seen time and time again. And what I have found is the people who are putting a meaningful is contextual, a meaningful amount of something that they value towards their goals are usually far more successful because they have skin in the game. That's something that, and I'm the same way. If I buy a course, if somebody gives me a book, unless it's something I really want to read, I'm probably not going to read it. If I pay money for it, of course I'm going to read it. Probably to a detriment, even if I don't want to. Well, I paid $7 for this. I should really make sure I read it. Free food's the same way. Somebody gives you a plate, you don't like it, you're going to wait till they go away, and maybe you're going to throw it away. But if you go to a really fancy restaurant and you get food and it's not that great, I'm probably still going to eat it because I paid a fair amount of money for it. And I don't return my food. I don't know. I'm weird about that. So yeah, I think it's just the psychology of when you invest in something and you put skin in the game, you are more afraid of losing the skin in the game than not doing
Yeah, really, to me, it sounds like, this is it's coming from a level of respect for, hard-won dollars, a level of respect for the food that was prepared and the growing of the food, like how the food came to the kitchen and then how it was prepared, just having that baseline of, I will respect this work that's been done, right? There was work used to acquire the money. There was work used to prepare the food, right? So having that respect is part of that, right? Is actually that way that that you're able to put part of yourself into really everything you do, right? I even the little things matter, So it's when we can have that level of awareness in ourselves of what are my values, and am I acting in alignment with my values? That's what leads us to living in alignment with our goals and our values in a way that creates this fulfilling life. And what I'm hearing, you're getting these cool new opportunities, right? You're experiencing life in a different way than you knew that you would.
Yes.
Right. So and that does require courage, right? When you get the invitation to go speak about something that you're not necessarily feeling like this is something that you've mastered already. It's going to be so easy. I already know everything about it, but it's more of the side of, what am I going to say to these people? I'm supposed to get up on stage. It's scary, right?
Yeah, I'm terrified.
You're letting yourself grow in a wonderful way. So I really like what I'm hearing here. This is really cool, Kevin.
I appreciate it.
And I'm really, it's weird. I'm proud of you. It's weird to say that.
No, I accept it. I accept it. And one of the things that I've been working through, so I grew up without a dad. I subconsciously, unconsciously, now more consciously, am probably seeking approval of men more than I need. And I think that affects me, and not in this conversation. You're a very balanced human. So for me, it's like this, I could talk to you all day, every day. I feel very safe here. But I know there's been other instances where it's harder to be myself because I'm looking for approval. And it really only happens with men. A lot of the shows I go on, our team is like 90% women, right? Our audience is very, very mostly women. A lot of our clients are women. A lot of the podcasts I go on, a lot of them are women. That's really easy for me at this point because it's almost like the expectations. If I go on a podcast with somebody who's hyper masculine, the expectations are I'm going to be hyper masculine. When I'm not, it's a potential disappointment. And again, this is me saying this kind of out loud, so I don't know what's going to come. But if I go on a podcast with somebody who, let's say it's a feminine woman, who sees me and expects that I'm going to be a hyper masculine man, and I over deliver by being vulnerable, that's kind of easy. So these types of podcasts, again, growth with you is different because I feel safe and I'm not trying to be a certain thing. But every podcast has an opportunity for growth for me, no matter how many times I do it. It doesn't matter that I've done 1,000. It doesn't matter. There's always a new way to throw the ball, and there's a new way to hit the ball. There's always a way to improve it. And I'm grateful that I've got the opportunity to do that with you. But it takes two to tango. So I'm sending that back to you. I couldn't have done it if you didn't ask the questions you asked in the way you asked the questions.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. And I hear that. I hear that, right? When you have different, every connection is different, right? So when you're talking to some people, some people will have an expectation based on how you look, right? It may be the case, and it's hard to know, right? We might be in a video game, or we might be souls inside of bodies, or there might be any number of realities that could be, right? But on this planet, something that gets talked about a lot is, how do you look? Oh, you look like, you look like me, or you don't look like me. And then that can really affect how expectations come about. And then what I like hearing from you is that you feel like it's an easy win if you can, feel like you and the host are actually capable of creating more connections from who you are on the inside versus just the way you look on the outside. And so I understand what you're saying. Like it can feel like an easy win, but I think it's not. Doesn't mean that it's not valuable. I think it's like a magic trick in a way, right? But it's still very valuable. These connections, like you said, are so valuable. And what I want to ask of you is, how do you, because you do so many podcast episodes, for me, sometimes I feel like I'll leave a podcast episode and I need time to process. Like, have this conversation. I don't know. It might take me a while to process things, and then I'll probably come up with new questions, right? But it might go on in me for, I don't know how long it takes. But for you, because you're doing so many, what's your processing look like? So after the podcast, do you take some time? Do you think it over? Do you write yourself some notes? What do you do after the podcast? I know that you talk to Alan, your business partner. Tell me about your unwinding process after recording an episode.
Usually I'm back to back pretty much all day, so there isn't really any time. Sometimes I will literally, it'll be 1 to 1:56, and then I have 4 minutes to pee, fill up my water, and then I'm back. Some nights, so I usually work till like 6:30. I'll just tell my wife, I'll say, hey, I'm going to eat in the living room and watch TV. Like, I just need to unwind. Other nights, it's just like, hey, what time do you want to hang out in bed? So it really depends. I think I'm doing it while I'm on the episode, which is why I've said so many things to you in the way I've said them, because I know I may never see you again. So it's important to me to give it to you in real person and not through email after. Like, hey, that was a really good interview. I want to do it while it's fresh. So I think I'm probably at this point doing it more metacognitively than in reflection. Because my goal in the episodes we produce is to add as much value as humanly possible. So I always know kind of where I want to go. I don't know how I'm going to get there necessarily, but I always know kind of where I want to go. On these, it'll be a question that gets asked where I say, oh my goodness, I've never heard that before. And then my brain starts going to like an answer. I think that's probably the best advice or the best answer I can give. In the beginning, I'm sure I used to do 2 calls and then I'd have to take the rest of the day off because I was so overwhelmed with thoughts, and that was all I could handle. Now I can do back-to-backs all day, and it's not easy, but it's doable. It's sustainable, but I think I'm just micro-learning throughout them. And the ones like these types of episodes are very mentally taxing, because I'm not saying I do this, but if somebody asks me a question I've been asked a million times, I have a neuro pathway. This is where we go. I don't have any of those yet with you. So every single question you're asking, I'm trying to figure out like what is the truth, and then how do I sift through that? But I think it's happening in the moment. It's probably the best way to explain it now. But it hasn't always been that way. I think a lot of that is just a product of necessity. Alan and I have a running joke. We used to have a studio. We used to go to a studio. Now I have a studio at home. But him and I would go to the studio, and there would be a time where we would be having such deep conversations that my brain would just shut off. It's like, you're done. Maximum space filled. You don't have anything left. What I've tried to do is constantly push that over the last 7 years, and now I'm just capable of more. But there were times where I would have to tap out. I can't do it. That's it. That's all I've got. So I think that's probably where I'm at now. It's happening in the moment. It's a lot of it's going into, a lot of it's like intuitively, what does that mean? What does that connect to? Yeah, it's just there's more reps and there's more things to pull from and connect to now.
Something for me to aspire to. There we go. I
Look,
like that.
you are closer than I was at this point in my journey, so I think you're going to be just fine. If you heard I don't know how many you've recorded, but if you heard us when we were in the first year, there wasn't a lot of this going on.
What was it like back then? What's the difference?
Oh man, the difference is I thought I knew the truth back then. I thought I knew the truth that was going to help everybody, and that wasn't it. My life was so challenging in different ways back then that it was really hard to talk about what I was going through. Because I was broke and I was heartbroken and single and lonely. So it was really hard to talk about what I was going through. Now I love talking about what I'm going through because it's real. It's real, and I feel safe and vulnerable, and I feel like it's valuable to talk about. That now the big thing is it is a business. Back in the day, we'd record an episode and I'd go hang out and play Call of Duty. It's like, this is awesome. This is what entrepreneurship is all about. No, that's what I thought. But now we have team meetings. We have a chief officers meeting on Saturday. What am I doing in a chief officers meeting on a Saturday? Who am I? I'm a chief officer? Whoa, that's weird. In the beginning, it was just kind of like a fun, what felt like hobby. Well, yeah, this is cool. It didn't really feel that real, And now this is my life. I do this every day. This is the business. We have a big team. So yeah, it feels very real now. Back then, it was kind of like a fun, convenient hobby more than anything.
I feel like there's some value to that way that you started, because look where you're at now. You've really gone the distance, right? And you're in the middle of it, right? Make no mistake. Like, I don't think that there's any slowing you guys down for decades, right? You guys are planning this out. You and your business partner, you and your wife, right? Your company. You have a lot of structure that you've built to support what started as a fun hobby. So what was that kernel? What was that one thing like inside of you that let you know this was the thing, right? Because it's led to all of this other growth in all aspects of your life, right? But it started with one like sort of feeling or one sort of insight. Like how did you latch on to this? Like, how did you know this was the thing for you? How did you recognize this was the opportunity for you to pursue?
I don't really know. Because I didn't always believe this was possible. I really didn't. I didn't believe where I am today was possible for me. I genuinely didn't. The one belief I always had was if I could survive long enough to form some form of result, it would be worth it. So honestly, that has been what has gotten me through. Going back to what we started with, I'm not kidding. I remember the 7th episode I ever did. It was the Hyperconscious podcast at that point. It was called Scratching the Surface, because I had sub-series. Scratching the Surface it's not going to be super deep. We're just going to scratch the surface. And the title was Chase Your Effing Dreams, episode number 7. And in that episode, I talked about how I loathed my job. I didn't want to do it anymore. And one day I'm going to wake up when I want. I'm going to go to sleep when I want. I'm going to be my own boss, go to the gym when I want. I'm going to live a life that I get to choose. And the fact that I even had the opportunity to do that, Michael, was enough for me. I was reckless with a lot of the stuff. I left my job. I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a 401k. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have health insurance for like 7 years. I don't care. I have an opportunity to do something that I'm dreaming about. I'm going to give it everything that I have, and I'm going to try to earn my spot every single day. So it was really that. I don't know how often people get the opportunity to see an actual dream of theirs come into reality and then have the opportunity to grasp it. I had that, and I said, I'm not letting this go. And I had a business partner. I don't know. I wouldn't have done this by myself. That I'm certain of. I had somebody who was there with me saying, dude, let's do it. Let's go to battle together. Let's do it. Like, we could do this. That was a huge piece of it. So I borrowed Alan's belief. I use a lot of the resilience that I have created over the 27 years prior to that. And I just have a deep, deep belief that whatever this journey is and wherever it ends up, it will be worth it. And if I ever wake up one day and decide it's not worth it, then I'll rethink what I'm doing. But until that day, it's all systems go, and I will continue grinding and doing whatever is necessary to grow the mission in alignment, obviously. Yeah, I think that's probably the best answer. I saw it. It was this is your dream. It's flying in front of you. You have the opportunity and the net to catch it. Are you going to do it or not? And I think even going and referencing that speech, it was the same thing. That was a dream. It was a dream for me to speak with Evan Carmichael when we interviewed him 4 or 5 years ago. sometimes one of the hardest parts of your dreams is saying yes to them when they show up. And I've just tried to do that, Michael. I just try to do that every time. And it usually goes better than I expect, which is nice. That's beneficial. But I just try. That's why I said, oh no, I'm not happy that I got asked this, because now I know I have to say yes. But that's become really one of the superpowers at this point.
You just said sometimes one of the hardest parts of realizing your dreams is saying yes when they show up. To me, that is very impactful and absolutely resonates with what I've seen. I mean, how many times does a dream actually manifest and we don't even see it? And then how many times does it manifest and we say no? Like, there could be a way of looking at the world where the world is constantly trying to uplift you, right? And of course, if you feel this way about the world, right, then you might understand that these dreams are manifesting all the time, like things that you thought about when you were a kid, things that you thought about 10 years ago, things that you thought about this morning, right? For me, I know absolutely where I'm at right now is very similar to what you described. There was a dream, and I know you mentioned that when you started your podcast, right, you were broke, you were brokenhearted, right? So not long ago, I had some of those same things happening in my life, just in this last year. And I felt that change as well. But it was definitely asked for. It was something that I dreamt about and I was hoping for, and just asking the universe, like praying to God and like everything I could do, like, hey, this is what I need, but I need to be able to see it for what it is. I need to be able to recognize the dream when it comes to me, right? And the thing I was asking for was for my wife, but I was like, I was in the dating scene and I live in Los Angeles. Things are not great in that dating scene. For me, I wasn't getting the results I wanted. And so I asked for, help me find her, the woman of my dreams, and make it known to me so that I won't let this thing pass me by. And so, and that was critical. Not just that she would show up, because maybe she'd already shown up, and I didn't know it. Make it known to me that this is the one. That was part of what I needed. So, you found that in your podcast. Not only did the podcast arrive, right? You were a guest on somebody else's podcast, right? The opportunity showed up in your life, right? And so you got the conscious knowledge, hey, people make podcasts. I'm a person too. Maybe I can make a podcast, right? But then you saw that this was the dream that could lead you to places unknown, lead you on this path, and then you grasped it, right? So because there's so much noise in the world, right? We see people living their dreams all the time because everybody's a dreamer in their way, right? And everybody's living some form of a dream, whether it's a dream that you might aspire to or not, whether it's a dream that they feel that is beneath them or not. We're still living some sort of a dream. For you, you saw it, you're riding this wave, you're manifesting it. What do you see as the future of this? Where do you want to go now? Like, how are you going to shape this dream? You're on the ride, right? Where do you want to go? Where do you want this to take you? How do you want to develop and grow? Where do you want to be in a few years from now?
This is always a very challenging question. And the reason is because a lot of that Alan knows that I don't know yet. So again, just being humble. I didn't expect to be here 7 years in. I don't know if I can tell you we're going to be in 5. The ultimate goal, if I was to choose an actual goal, it would be more, I don't want to say healed, but I would have worked way more on the inner stuff and figured out what's going on from childhood wounds. Like continuing to really, really focus on that. I think that's the season I'm in. So this is what I've noticed. This is a great opportunity. Evan, opportunity happens. External opportunity, flare up of internal triggers. Interesting. Why don't I ever feel good enough even when the person who brought me there gave me the best introduction ever? I really hope I don't disappoint him. Where's that coming from? Cool. Then we work on the internal stuff and then we get an external opportunity and it becomes this cycle of you work on yourself internally, you get external opportunities, that external opportunity forces you to work on yourself internally. So I'm hoping that, let's say 5 years from today, I have really, really worked deeply on all of that inner stuff. I'm really looking forward to our charity being bigger. We have a charity for children of single parents. That's something that it's only a couple of years old and we're really trying to figure it out. But I'm really excited for that to be big because that's one of the things. It's different. It's just showing up is adding value. Just having that event is adding value. It's like, it's a really awesome day where there's no results. I don't really care how many kids show up. I want a bunch to show up, but it's one of those things where it's like, I know anybody who's here is going to get some value. So I'm looking forward to that growing because that obviously has a place near and dear to my heart. Man, I want to give my wife more certainty. I know I've heard the only thing harder than being an entrepreneur is being married to one. So I'd love to give my wife extra certainty around the fact that this is all, and again, she's the most supportive and she's my ride or die. She was here long before results, but yeah, give her some more certainty and some more proof that this whole thing is real. And then just keep growing as a man. Yeah, keep growing as a man. Where will we be numbers wise? I don't know. I'm not really sure. Like we'll be somewhere that's more than we are today, that I'm certain of. But it all starts with being a little bit better as a man, as a leader, as a partner, as a husband, as a speaker, as a podcaster. So that's kind of my focus. I let Alan tell me what the numbers are going to be at this point.
Yeah. So there's the relationship underneath all of the forward, to the directionality and where you're going to go, right? Is what I'm hearing, right? So the relationships that you want to create for the future, right? This sort of this legacy to charity. Tell me more about that. What is your charity? You're starting it from scratch, or you're working with an existing charity, or
No.
tell me more.
Yeah. So Alan and I, when we partnered up, every single Father's Day we would spend together. We'd go fishing, or usually we'd go fishing. And we didn't do it the first year. We didn't do it in 2017, I don't think, but we did it in 2016, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22. And eventually, 3 years ago, we said, you know what we should do? We should have a foundation where we rent out the YMCA, we rent out some place where what's normally a potentially sad day for children of single parents can be a really happy one. Because that's what we did. On Father's Day, it's not like I'm going to see my dad, and Alan didn't have the opportunity to do so, so we just go fishing. That was what made our normally somewhat sad day a happier day. So our thought was, well, if we could do that, that would be awesome. And we're a self-improvement company, so we could give out books or we could give out whatever, and that might be a really good opportunity for kids to get into books younger. So it's very small right now. It's still just like a foundation. We need to do all the 501c3 and all that stuff. But we started it. I think we'll probably try to partner with someone just because we're a global podcast, so we don't have a huge local market. So that's kind of a potential bottleneck. But right now, the main focus is let's make a sad day happy. Then we also have a holiday event. So we have one on Father's Day or Father's Day weekend. And then we added a second one for the holiday season because I know money can be tight around the holidays, especially if you're a single parent. So we have the same thing. We rent out a YMCA. We play basketball with the kids. My wife does face painting usually. Alan's girlfriend comes and supports. And then we give away presents at the end. So when the parent fills out how many kids are coming, we also have check boxes for what present you want. Football, basketball, soccer ball, this. That way the kids can be active too. So a little bit of self-improvement in our foundation, even though it's for the littles.
Nice. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So you're doing this in your local community.
Yes.
And you're looking to partner with another organization. Who would be your ideal partner?
I don't know yet. I'm not sure. We've had very light conversation, Alan and I, about it because we just had the Father's Day event and now that department's kind of on coast mode because there's other things going on. Something local that already has the need. Yeah, that we could come in and say, look, we're already hosting these twice a year. We would love to make this part of something that you do. We just don't have the demand. We feel like it's a really good product, quote unquote, if we're talking in business terms. We just don't know where the market is for it. I don't know how to find those people. I don't know where. Not a lot of people go on Facebook and sign up to a group that's for single parents. Like I don't know how to find that yet. So it's more the initial thoughts now, the initial conversations. I don't know. I don't know what the group would look like yet.
Maybe just at the tactical level, maybe a YMCA or a VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, or like an Elks group, or Masonic. One of these groups that might either already have the audience that you're looking for, or also a facility, that you could use, maybe a rec center, or, sometimes parks certain parks will have like a rec center thing. So maybe those would be some ideas.
I appreciate it.
In your local community.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're kind of partnered with a YMCA. So we've done it. We've done 3 years and we rent out the YMCA. It's just a matter of the YMCA is more like a gym for adults. So it's like they don't really, I don't know if they have kids programs. So that might not be the route, but I think partnering with like a boys and girls club, I think that could be really big and really beneficial. And then it's the matter of like, what does that look like? We're very segmented as a business. We don't do a ton of collaborations. We've never taken $1 from an investor. Everything we've done is internal, organic. We're very like cautious with collaborations. So this will be one of the first times we actually go outside and collaborate with someone. Obviously, it's for a really, really good cause. But I think we're working through some growing pains with that probably.
Why do you feel like you're cautious with collaborating?
We've done it, like we've collaborated on events and a lot of people just aren't who they say they are. I'm sure you've heard the quote, don't meet your heroes. We've met some people, many people that we look up to, and I've got to see the behind the scenes of their lives. And some of these people I didn't want to spend any more time with after that. So I would hate to hitch something that means a ton to me to someone that it doesn't mean a ton to them. That I don't want that to happen. That's a fear. And we had that happen early. There were people who's just like, this isn't aligned, so we're not going to do it. And then the other thing is, this is always a fine line, but there's always people trying to tell us like, oh, you should do this in your business. You should do this in your business. You should do this in your business. And I think it's usually meaning well. It's coming from a place of heart. But a lot of the stuff we do, we're not doing for now. We're doing for 20 years. It's 20 years down the line, but most people, including myself, can't see that. So it's usually like, I don't know how to explain it. This is what Alan said. So we're going to do what Alan said because he knows and he's been right about everything. If he's been wrong about everything, that'd be a different conversation. Alan has he's had different traumas than I have. He's had a lot of mentors, millionaires, billionaires. And I think he's been misled a lot. And I think he has a deep fear of being misled again. And it's just easier to do it ourselves. Easier being the, maybe not real word, but doing it ourselves is just more aligned at this point.
So what does that look like? Like Alan has had the mentors and then he's felt misled. Like, is there anything that you could share about that would be something that could be helpful for people who are looking to not be, misled in their mentorship? Like, are there any takeaways that are actionable?
Yeah, I would say get very, very familiar with your core values, your core beliefs, and your core aspirations. I know you talked a little bit about, I think, core values. A lot of the people that were giving the advice didn't have the same core values as Alan. So it was like, one of the things we get all the time is your prices are too low. Your prices are too low. Your prices are too low. We've had mentors say you should basically do it for free then. You just don't understand what we're doing. Why? Why do you get to dictate my prices if I'm the one who's doing the work and I can find a way to make it sustainable and grow the business and help the person? A lot of that, it's been like, oh, you should do this high ticket thing. You shouldn't work this way. You should put scarcity in your marketing. I don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. That's not how we do business. So I think a lot of it's just been that. It's been a lot of the people have been like the older school business owners and the older school entrepreneurs who do things in a certain way. It's different now than it used to be. It's not like that. I'm not going to have a countdown timer that says if you don't buy the course, the price goes up. Whatever. I don't want that. That's not the way we do business. So it's mostly that. It's a misunderstanding because even in this conversation, I'm sure when I say we're trying to create the most impactful self-improvement company of all time, there will be people that listen that say like, that's cute or whatever. And I understand, but that's what we're intending on doing. Anybody who's never done that, I don't know whether or not the advice is going to help or hurt. I don't know because I've never done it. I just know Alan has a burning desire and a genius brain, and he knows things that I've seen come true that I don't know how he knew that we have to trust. And I think my deepest pain has been never feeling valued enough. I think one of his deepest pains is knowing how valued he could be, but being afraid to lean into that. And I think that's kind of what we're working on now. So a very unique case. I don't know how much value is there for the audience, but that's the best way I could paint it.
So, right. So I also have a similar trauma to you guys, right? Mm-hmm. Like no dad, no consistent dad in my life, I think it's on a handful of times, if you look at any one year, maybe once that year, maybe a different year, maybe a couple times that year, depending on the year. So similar wound from childhood. And I've noticed I had a similar wound a similar way of manifesting that wound as an adult, which was not feeling like it was okay for me to, get value in exchange for giving value, right? So I could show up and give all the value, and that was okay. But getting the value, that was the challenge. Like for me to allow myself to feel that that was okay. So, which manifested in, ways of just basically like I didn't feel like I was worth it. I didn't feel like I was, and then trying to overcome that using the wrong tools, like ego tool or some, then I would say words that don't create relationships, that don't further relationships, and they end relationships. And, that's a terrible challenge. It's so hard to overcome this challenge, so how have you dealt with had that wound, no dad wound, right? Abandonment wound from the father. And then it makes you feel a direct, what I'm seeing is there's a pattern here. We're all sort of feeling like there's something around money, maybe, or call it value, and we're not allowed to get it, right? Because we weren't well considered, we were unloved, we didn't get the love we saw other people get, throughout our lives, other children, other young boys who did have fathers, and they were able to, feel that confidence. I know with my own son, he's so different than me, right? Because I basically saw what my parents did and I just did the opposite.
Yeah.
That was my playbook. Whatever they did, I did the opposite with him. I didn't feel cared for. He felt cared for. And now it's so wild. He's so independent and confident. And he's like, getting jobs and making money. And he's young. And I'm like, he's a teenager. I'm like, this is amazing. He's living his dream life. But you and I and your partner faced a very tough challenge. And I want to know how have you handled this challenge, right? Not feeling that confidence, not feeling like you can get the value. Tell me how you've handled that.
Yeah, I think anytime, maybe not this simple of a blanket statement, but when we find ourselves struggling to receive value, it's usually a suggestion of low self-worth. Just a question I ask clients: on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe in your own unique capability to build the castle? Whatever the castle is, build the podcast, build the business, whatever. Somebody might say like 8 out of 10. Awesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, for 0 to 10, how much do you believe after you build it and after you have the beautiful landscaping and you got the TV and all that amazing stuff, how worthy of you do you feel to move in? And that's where it's like, oh, 2 out of 10. All right, that's a self-worth issue, not a self-belief issue. I had the opportunity to meet my dad when I was 27. Meeting my dad was another one of those things, Michael, where I said, I really hate the fact that this is now an option because I have to do it. So I was sitting on my couch going through my Facebook messages, and I didn't realize at the time, this was 2017. I didn't realize at the time that if somebody messages you on Facebook and they're not friends with you, it goes to a separate folder. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing. So I was going through this folder, cleaning it out. And I got this message and it said, hey, Kevin, I'm blank. I'm your father's girlfriend. And it was for 3 years prior. And I remember thinking, no, not today. Not today. It's Saturday. I'm supposed to have pizza and watch the fights. We are not going to do this today. No. But I got curious. So I opened it and said, hey, Kev, I'm blank. I'm your father's girlfriend. He has been seeing you on Facebook and you look like you're doing really well and he's very proud and he would love the opportunity to meet you if that's something you'd want to do. And I remember I hot potatoed my phone onto the floor. I fell on the floor. I started bawling my eyes out because for most of my life, I never thought this was going to be a possibility. So I had said some very bad things about my dad, not to him, but about him. And I remember I texted one of my friends who knew my story. And I said, hey, I got to get a message from my dad today. And they said, what do you mean? And I explained it. And they said, are you going to go see him? And I said, yeah, I think I have to. And they said, do you want me to come? And I said, no, this is one of those things I got to do myself. I don't want to, but I just know I have to do it myself. So I agreed and we set a date and we set a spot. We were going to meet halfway between where we lived. And I remember I went to this diner. I remember I got there early because I tend to be early and I sat down and I remember thinking to myself, Michael, I don't know what he looks like. So this is going to be like supremely awkward. How am I going to know when he gets here? I'm not even going to know, but he knows what I look like. So I guess that's it. So I sat down and I just waited and I saw somebody walk by the window and I was like, that's it. I don't know how I know, but energetically, intuitively, you hang on to that stuff. That's it. So he came in, he found me, sat down, and it was about as awkward as you can imagine. It was brutal. It was a brutal how do we pick up on 27 years of memories in 27 minutes? How's that going to happen? And there were times where he was crying and you're not going to get anything out of me. You'll get zero emotion. I will be stoic. But I left that day with a really unique new perspective for me, which I think really helped. Number one, I'm kind of glad he wasn't around, because I realized that I had worked more on myself in the last 2 years than he did in his entire life. I realized that in our relationship, I am the father. I am way more mature and way more aware and more self-improvement, all of that stuff than he ever was. And I realized that I gave the power of controlling my life in a lot of ways to somebody who just wasn't capable of controlling it in the first place. That did something for me. When I left that day, I realized that I don't even want his approval. I don't need your approval. I'm doing just fine. I don't need your approval. If anything, you need my approval, not the other way around. That was a huge beginning of an unlock for me, right? I ended up seeing him a couple times later, because I wanted to see what happened. I never thought this was going to happen. I mean, maybe we'll form something. Spent, I don't know, maybe a couple afternoons with him. And then one day I was just like, I've learned what I'm supposed to learn. And I'm very honest with myself about relationships. So my understanding was, there's no way this is sustainable. I'm not going to fit you into my life like you think I'm going to fit. It's just not going to work. So I just kind of let it die, and I learned a lot of lessons from it. That was the thing that really, really helped me. That was a big piece that helped me was, look, if anything, I am more than worthy. I deserve more than that. That what was presented to me, I deserve more than that. Not less than. That really, really helped me. I know not everybody has the opportunity to do that. I told Alan had a stepdad when he was younger. I said, you got to message your stepdad, you got to go see him. Because when you see this man, you're most likely going to recognize all the things that you didn't recognize before about yourself and about this person. That's the best content I can give on that, because that's been my experience. And then it's just reflecting. It's just reflecting after experiences and figuring out, okay, why did that go really well? Like, why is it so good with you? Because you and I are very similar. And you know what it's like to be me in certain ways, and maybe I know what it's like to be you in certain ways, and we're on the same frequency with that. There's no toxic here. But I've had experiences like that, and then I reflect on it. It's like, okay, why? Oh, was I trying to match them? So I was more toxic than I wanted to be? Oh, no. Interesting. Okay, how do I avoid that? All right, cool. The other thing, too, and the last thing I'll say about it is, I have a very unique relationship with worthiness. I am a firm believer, for me, I'm not saying this for everyone, I deserve what I work for. I deserve to be in better shape than Alan right now because I'm working harder than Alan is. I deserve more podcast results than someone who's 2 episodes in. I just do. I've put in more reps. That's all it is. I don't deserve to be a multimillionaire yet, though. I'm not there. I haven't done enough work. I haven't added enough value. I haven't figured out the way yet. I'm in a good spot. I have what I deserve, and I don't have what I don't deserve yet. And I'm okay with that. The second I start treating my wife terribly, I don't deserve her anymore. And she should be. Now, based on that truth, I'll never let it happen. But I think a lot of us get mixed up. We get mixed up with worthiness, and that's why so many people charge such high prices, because they think it's going to make them feel worthy, and that's not true. That's not the way it works. I think that's why people do high ticket stuff, because they're entitled. Well, I want to make $25,000. Cool. But it's not about you. It's not really about you at the end of the day, and that's probably not going to do what you think it's going to do. Now, that's a whole different tangent, but yeah, that's what I would say. That really helped me. But I know not everybody has the opportunity to do that.
So even though you're not, you don't self-describe as somebody who always is the overachiever, who might be the person who like runs towards your fear. I do hear actually in several of your stories that you do say yes to your fear.
I try.
Right?
I try.
Yeah. So this is a thing that would be a huge amount of courage it would require to say yes to meeting your father after 27 years of abandonment. And then you did, and you realized that he wasn't, someone worthy of putting on a pedestal in some way, and that his leaving you didn't mean that you weren't good enough. It was more about him.
Yep.
His flaws. Nothing about baby Kevin wasn't good enough, and all through your life that you weren't good enough, right? But then the timing is always, feels a little weird, because you're like being public, making podcasts,
yeah,
right? And then so and the girlfriend's like, wow, it seems like you're doing so great. How about getting back together with your dad who can bring you right back down? How's that? How's that for a challenge?
I was afraid. There was a little piece of me that was afraid of, and again, I'm not successful enough where it's like, Dad, you should find someone else. I can't pull you out of these dark holes you created for yourself. But there was a piece of me that was thinking that for sure. But there was a piece of me. The straw that really broke the camel's back for me is he commented on one of my Facebook posts, like something about my mustache. He's like, that mustache has got to go or something. And it was like, do you have no situational awareness? What are we doing? That's what we're doing? So at that point, it was like, look, man, no, you've lost your privileges here. I was doing this as much for you as I was for me. I'm not doing it for you anymore. And I don't need to do it for me. You're a child. You're a child. My mustache has to go. Like you have my number. You could have texted me. So that was a thing that for me, it was like, okay, I think we're beyond a place where this is going to be a constructive relationship, or I'm going to have to put an unsustainable amount of effort into this. And I'm just honest enough to admit with myself that I'm not going to do it. And I don't want to lead him on. I don't want to hurt him. Let's just sever ties here and grow my mustache out.
And what a great outcome that you were able to realize that without going too far down that path.
Yeah.
Right. Somehow you were able to get that insight like, hey, you've not been in my life. And now you've come in a very toxic way. And as you said, it's either going to take too much effort from you to try to sort them out, like, and that you just realize right away, like you didn't want to do that. I think that is perhaps one of the best outcomes that could have been for this story of this relationship. And as you said earlier, maybe it was for the best that he wasn't even in your life, because you spent some time introspecting, and clearly this guy has toxic behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't able to find the courage in himself to overcome his own toxic behaviors and trust that he could be a good father to you.
Yep.
So he had to leave because he couldn't trust himself, right? So that brings me to my next question for you, which is about family. What are your family goals in terms of, are you open? Do you think that kids are something that you're going to do? Like speaking to someone who's had this trauma, this childhood wound, like what are your thoughts on that? Do you have goals for a family and our kids are a part?
I used to think I wanted to have kids. And I think I got to a place where I thought it's very selfish of me to want to have kids so I can prove to myself that I could be a better dad. It just doesn't, logically for me, it's like, I don't know if that's the thing. So we will not be having children of our own. Will we adopt or foster at some point? Maybe. My wife and I have talked about that, and we're open to that. But yeah, we won't be having children of our own. One of the reasons is I'm afraid I'll have to choose between the business and family. I don't want that ever to have to be an option. I don't ever want that to be an option, because I know what we're trying to accomplish is already close to impossible. And me not having children, it makes it a little bit easier. Not a ton, but a little bit easier, because it's not, one of my fears would be if I did have children, I wouldn't be at their baseball practice, and I wouldn't, because I have to choose over the business. And at this point, the business is the livelihood of, that's our future. So it's like, I'm in a weird position with that. So probably not our own for sure. Will we have foster children or adopt in the future? Maybe. But that's always been a conversation of, we need to be more financially free, because I want to make sure that everything is good and there's abundance and there's zero scarcity and there's no worries about that. And I really have to sit down and think to myself, what kind of caregiver dad would I want to be? Like, what would I be okay with? Would I be okay with saying, well, I can't come to your sports games, but I can play catch with you on the weekends? Like, is that something? I'd have to have a real honest conversation with myself that I haven't had yet. Obviously, I will at some point, and it'll suck, I'm sure, but I'm committed to doing that. So that's currently where I'm at. How will that evolve? Who knows, right? Who knows over the next few years? So that's where I'm currently at.
Yeah, then the sports games, that's like a whole afternoon. That's half a day right there. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I work 14 hours a day. I don't know how that would work. I'm scared. I'm scared of that. Now, if I had started this business when I was 17 instead of 27, that might be a different conversation. But time is not necessarily with me when it comes to that.
When I was in the place where I was closer to your age, before I had my son, and I was, coming across these thoughts, like do I want to have kids? And, and then what would that look like? You know, and also just seeing other like family members and other people, like, don't be surprised if change your mind on some stuff, because that's part of it. There was probably a time, when I was like, oh, I'm not going to have a kid, and it made a lot of sense. But then, I don't know what it is, but people do change their thoughts about that sometimes. And then it can unlock a different adventure and a different path that you hadn't thought of yet. It's interesting. It's just interesting. I'm not, far be it from me. I'm not just trying to tell anybody what to do in life. Okay. I'm never the one to tell anybody what to do, especially something as huge as that. But, what I like about meeting you and stuff is that you and learning about you, right now, is that you seem like somebody who is very committed to the health of relationships and stuff like that, which I think is a really nice foundation for either being a parent or being a foster parent or doing what you're doing in your charity, which is you're trying to give back to kids who, of single parents. It's all kind of the same direction, right? What level you choose to pursue, that's one thing, but it's all sort of the same direction. You've created some of this energy and a pipeline for directing some of this energy already by creating a foundation. So it'll be interesting for me to hear, how this unfolds for you. Do you end up adopting someday? What does that look like? How does it change your schedule?
I'll say this, Michael, behind the scenes. If I was to have my own children, I'd have to get the surgery reversed. So that's how committed I am to that. The decision has been made. I mean, we'll see. But I didn't enjoy getting it done in the first place. I don't know if I can get it undone. Got to be honest, got to be transparent.
Did you? I don't know if you saw The Office. There's that funny. There's a clip from The Office where the Michael Scott character is like getting that reverse back and forth. He goes snip, 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 snip. It's just very silly.
It's a great show. One of the best.
So I do want to talk about fun.
Sure.
Right. So we talked about finance, fitness, and family. I want to hear on fun. What is it that you do for fun? Like, what's the most fun that you could pack into a day? Like, what's fun for you? What's been unexpectedly fun? Tell me about fun for you, Kevin.
No, I feel like this is fun. That's for me. I love mixed martial arts. So the most fun I could pack into a Saturday is probably just watching fights all day and eating pizza. I love that. I'm very simple. I love yard games. I just don't play that often. So like Can Jam, all of that. I love that.
But what's Can Jam?
Can Jam is this game where you throw a frisbee. So there's two cans, and you have a teammate, and you throw the frisbee, and they have to try to knock the frisbee into the can. It's a great game. Great game. I love stuff like that.
Basketball, but with a frisbee.
Pretty much.
You whack the frisbee into the can like you throw a basket through a hoop.
Yep. And it has a little slot on the front, and if you throw it and you get it in the slot, nobody touches it, but if you get it in the slot, you win. So if you're good at frisbee, this is a good opportunity for you to win some games. So we like that. I enjoy that. Those are really, any chance I can be like a kid again, I have a ton of fun. But I like sitting in front of the TV and watching fights and eating pizza. That is like one of my favorite things in the world. I had a ton of fun on Sunday. My wife and I reorganized the office. It was more fun than I could have imagined. But that's because we were having fun together and laughing and giggling, and I was trying on a bunch of clothes that didn't fit or were too big. But that was like my gratitude for the night was, I don't know how we made that fun, but I am super grateful we did it. So that's an interesting example of fun.
Tell me more. How did office cleaning with your wife become fun? Let's dig a little deeper. I want to know, how does that be fun?
I think it goes to what we were talking about earlier, where old Kev that is really struggling with ego would have said something along the lines of, I don't need your help and I can do it myself. I'm not throwing away any of these clothes. Like this is a waste of time. That was one of the funnest things was I would grab a piece of clothing and be like, what do you think of this? And she'd be like, yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. You need to get rid of that. Let's donate that. And it didn't offend me. I was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, I've had this shirt since like 2012. It's probably time for me to get rid of this. So it was that. I think it was just, we allowed each other to be playful with our personalities. We didn't take anything too seriously. We didn't let anything offend us. It was just, I know you're right that this shirt is terrible. I just didn't want to admit it. And now I'm ready to admit it. So that was really fun. And she's really good at organizing, and I'm terrible at being organized. So that was fun. And then one of my lines is, how long until our union mandated lunch break? When is our union mandated lunch break? I need lunch. And we had fun around that. And then we had lunch and watched something. And so, yeah, it's that. It was something that I was just putting off, that it took like 4 hours, and it was a lot of work, but I was doing it with the person I love more than anyone. So who would I rather be doing it with? Nobody. Can we turn this into a really positive experience? 100%. 100%. But if you're looking for negativity, you're going to find it. I could have found a million ways to be negative, but if you're looking for positivity, you'll find a way to sift through the potential discomfort and find it. So yeah, that was just a couple simple examples.
So it was playful.
Yes.
You weren't approaching it with drudgery in mind, but you allowed it to become an experience where you pretend tried on different clothes, and she was your critic. Oh, that's terrible. And then you could enjoy like a form of critical feedback, a form of like she's negging you in a way.
Yeah.
Horrible, even though it's just a joke, right?
Yeah.
So it's in a fun context. And then at the same time, you guys were accomplishing something, and she was helping you out too.
Yeah.
So it's very wholesome. This is a very wholesome brand of fun.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one.
I appreciate it. And I also know when the office is clean, I'm more healthy, like mentally healthy. She's more mentally healthy. So this is also going to improve our quality of life, and we can do it for one another as well.
Nice. All right. So let's do the advice section. So what we're going to do is I want to ask you in each of the buckets, okay, finance, fitness, family, and fun, like some advice that you could give to others, like paying it forward, or as if you were talking to your younger self, like what's that people could use to make a business? Like how could people find their way to get started in a business or career? Like how would they know that? Like you found that for yourself, right?
Yeah.
How can you help others find with some words on the tactical level, find that or strategy level, find that business that they could pursue?
Man, yeah, I always feel jaded by this because I feel like I got lucky. I would go a couple places. One thing for me is I think most people understand the outline of their purpose, but they get stuck at the vehicle. So just all I mean by that is my purpose is to help a certain type of person accomplish a certain unique goal in a certain way. That's it. I help people get to the next level, whatever it is. Where things get wonky is when you say, well, how could I ever do that sustainably? I can never make any money doing that. I think a lot of us get stuck on the vehicle thing. So what I would say is first sit down and just understand purpose and vehicle are not the same thing. My purpose is not to be a podcaster. My purpose is to be the type of person I needed at my lowest point, and podcasting is just a vehicle I do it through, and YouTube or interviews or whatever. So I think that's an important piece. Man.
So really finding that thing that they love.
Finding the thing that you love. Finding the thing underneath the thing. Because it's usually not the thing. I love podcasting and speaking now. But I've just done it so much. I feel like I've actually gotten somewhat good at it. But I don't want to do a sports podcast. I have no interest in doing a sport. It's not the thing under the thing. That understanding that what we want is usually not just because of the results, it's because of the process. It's the process of doing it. So getting very clear in your core values, your core beliefs, and your core aspirations, I think is super valuable. Make a list of the 10 things that people have to pull you off of the court when you're doing. Like, what are the 10 things that the lights come on and you're there, and the lights turn off and you're there, and you're the last one in and the last one? Like, what are those things for you? And then I think from there, I think a lot of it's just creativity. One of the reasons we've grown the business as much as we have is because we've just been very creative with it. Opening this department and opening that department. I just want to make sure I can keep doing what I love. So I think it starts from a place of clarity, and then you get creative. But I don't really know. I mean, there's a bunch of different things, right? There's like, what pisses you off that makes you lose sleep? What do you lose track of time doing? This is a good example of that. What would I find you talking about on a Friday night if I was just eavesdropping? Like, that's a good one. What's your deepest pain? That's a good one. But that might not help you at all when it comes to the business, because the business is the vehicle. So yeah, the best tactical advice I could give is sit down, draw a line down the center of a piece of paper, write purpose on one side, vehicle on the other, and start writing what you think your purpose is. And if we had to frame it as I help blank accomplish blank in blank way, I think that's a really good start. And then what are the potential vehicles for that? And if you have the moment where you say, well, I could never do that because, I think it's probably more of a lack of belief in the vehicle than the purpose.
That's fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Other businesses, what do you think about if you are doing this and you just have ideas for businesses? What are some other businesses that sound exciting or that you might want to pursue? Like if you were not just that sound exciting, but seem like good businesses, if you were starting over today, what might you do?
Ooh,
that wasn't podcasting.
I want to create a mixed martial arts gym, and then I'd love to have classes for self-defense for sure. Like I would love to have a really, really, really nice mixed martial arts gym. And I'm not capable of teaching, so I would hire people to teach. But the culture in martial arts centers is amazing. So I'd love to have that for sure. I'd love to have a restaurant. I just know it's so hard to win with a restaurant, but I feel like I can make a pretty good menu. I love food, but I'm sure everybody said that before they started the restaurant. That might be one. What else? My goodness. What do I love doing? I feel like for me, I think more about how businesses could be more successful than I think about businesses. Like through creative. I was talking to somebody recently, and they're like, this was their thing. I want to start a podcast and a YouTube channel. I have a clothing brand, and I believe in sustainable living. And my clothing brand is sustainably sourced stuff. And I said, that's awesome. And they said, how do I connect it all? And I said, I don't really know, but this is what I think. Start a podcast, start a YouTube channel. Every single guest that you have on, you send your cheapest to produce thing completely free. So it ended up being a scarf. So you send them a scarf for free, 1,000% free. Some people are naturally going to share that because they're going to be like, oh my goodness, I was on Michael's podcast and I got a scarf. That's going to bring people to the audience, and those people might ultimately end up buying some of your clothes. You interview entrepreneurs about empowerment in your brand, but you do a plug for your services. And you make sure every time you record on video, and you're wearing a different piece of something you've created, and you just shout it out. Today, on whatever, episode number 7, I'm wearing the Equinox edition. And then boom. Then you're off to the races. We'll kind of see how that goes. So I think my brain works more like that, where, I don't know. I think of weird stuff, weird unscalable stuff like that. Like if I had a knife company, I would put a handwritten note in every single box. Every single box would be, hey, Michael, thank you so much for purchasing this. Kevin made this knife. I hope you enjoy it. Out the door. Stuff like that, I think, is where my brain goes. I don't know that I'm good at creating businesses because I just fell into this, and Alan has done a lot of the business strategy. So that's the value I would try to add here.
That feels like you're really strengthening that customer relationship.
Always.
Like I might see that as like customer success, right? Like they feel like I'm never going to leave this relationship. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an evangelist. I'm going to tell other people about it.
Yeah.
I like that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so for people just starting out, like the younger version of you, the guy who's just starting out, or the woman who's just starting out, and they're trying to get their legs as an entrepreneur. Like they know that they want to pursue their own thing. It's not a career. They decided they're not going to pursue a career. They didn't like their job, right? The job's not bringing them happiness and fulfillment. And so they decided they're going to be an entrepreneur. How can you give them some tactics that they can use?
Man, in terms of clarity, or do they already have clarity now?
They just know they don't want their job. That's all they know.
Okay.
So if they feel like it's entrepreneur or job, and they're going for entrepreneur.
I would say, what did you enjoy from your job or your jobs? Like, what are some of the things, maybe not the whole job, the umbrella of the job, but what are some of the day-to-day tactics, activities, habits, responsibilities that you had? That's one. That's a question I would ask. I would say just start doing a bunch of random stuff and see what you feel the best doing. The reason entrepreneurship is so hard is because if you don't enjoy the process, you never get the results. And I think a lot of us start for the results. I had a call with someone the other day. He said, can I have advice on my business? And I said, from my perspective, you should be doing more of this, this, and this. And he said, oh, whoa, Kev, we're going in the wrong direction. I want to do less. I think you're in the wrong industry, my friend. I don't think you should be an entrepreneur then. So focused on doing less that you're never going to get the opportunity to do less because you got to do more to do less. So I don't know. I feel like it would be that. It would be get rid of the results you want and identify what you're okay with your day-to-day life looking like. That's the best piece of advice I could have given Kev, because I didn't know I was going to be on 9 interviews a day. I'm grateful I am. I didn't know that I was going to be doing the taxes. I still do the taxes. I send them to somebody, but I still got to do all the reconciliations, the whole thing. I didn't know that was going to be a thing. That's really helped me, and I feel like that's helped other people not go down paths that they didn't need to. If I said to someone, I had this conversation with somebody one time. He said, I want to do what you do. I want to do what you guys do. And I said, awesome. He said, but I want to be like Gary Vee. And I was like, well, I don't know what it's like to be Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not there. But let's talk about, excuse me, let's talk about what's important to you. Is it important to you to get your kids off the bus? Yes or no? And he said, yeah. Is it important for you to be at every sporting event? And you can see how I started thinking about that after I asked this question to him. And he said, yeah, I'll never miss. How, excuse me, how important is it for you to be at dinner every night on time? And he said, I don't never want to miss dinner. I said, brother, I don't think being that level of entrepreneur is for you. I miss dinner, and I'm not Gary Vee. I'm not even close. And he ended up going in a different direction. So I would say, imagine what you want your day-to-day living experience to be like and just get rid of the results for a second, because the day-to-day living experience is going to be 95% of the journey anyway. And that way, at least we can be honest about the fact that maybe you don't want to be on camera all day. I do. I love it. Maybe you don't want to be speaking all day. I do. I love it. I don't want to be in spreadsheets all day. Alan does. But that took us 7 years to figure out. We could have known that faster if I said, well, what is the day-to-day of somebody who's doing something I love? Like, what does that look like? Okay, maybe I can experience that and I can look at that. That's the advice I would give. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I appreciate
it. Okay, so the lightning round.
Okay.
Go through each of the buckets, and I want to hear the best investment you've made, whether it's a supplement, whether it's a commitment, what it is that other people can also do that you've ever paid for your fitness. Let's start with fitness. What's the best investment you ever made in your world of fitness? Did I just throw? You want to start with a different bucket?
No,
you want to just start with finance?
No.
Okay.
No, I want to start wherever you want to start.
All right, let's start with fitness. What's like? It could be a supplement. It could be a workout regime. I don't know what the best investment for fitness that's giving you the most in your life.
I would say any app to help you track your calories and your macros. I use Macro Factor, but they're all very similar. That fitness, I think one of the big issues that people have is going to the gym is 2 hours. Tracking your calories for the rest of the day is the other, however long you're awake. And that's usually the harder part. So that has really helped me a ton. And I'm somebody who tries to track my calories. I'm in a diet right now, and I track my calories every day and I track my macros. So that's been super helpful. And it's like, I don't know, $15 a month. Can't go wrong there. And a gym membership. A gym membership would be number one, but I feel like that's low-hanging fruit that is not super valuable. So 1 and 2.
And what's the best investment you've ever made for your finance world?
Man, podcast. But that's not an investment. I would say there's a book called The Psychology of Money, I believe, by Morgan Housel. That book, there's a book by Morgan Housel about money. I think it's The Psychology of Money. That changed a lot of my perspectives on money for sure. That would probably be the best use of money other than like the podcast.
What was the perspective shift that you got from the book?
Most people think that people that become financially free in ways other than just having really good behaviors. Like I remember there was a story of a custodian who never made more than like $40,000 a year, that when he passed away, he had something like $16 million swirled away or something. The numbers are probably off, but that was behavior, not luck, not virality. That was a behavior. So it talked about the psychology behind money and the behavior on how to go around it and be about it. So that was something that was super helpful for me.
How about family? Okay. What is the most impactful, the best investment that you've made in terms of family?
This is going to be a weird one. Probably we have separate beds and I twitch. I'm like a heavy twitcher. I think I'm fighting most of the time in my dreams. My wife didn't sleep well because I would wake her up. So we got separate beds that do the recline and that whole thing. And when we go to sleep, we push them apart like an inch so they don't touch. And she is sleeping way better, which makes me happier, which means that's a huge thing. So honestly, that one probably, in a weird way, Michael, the bed is like fitness, family, and finance. Because I sleep 8 hours a night. I get up and go to the gym, and it's better for my wife, and family, it's better for my wife, which means I'm happier and we're more patient because we're getting good sleep. So that's like one of the best investments I've ever made for sure.
What's that? It's a special kind of bed? Is it like a brand or?
It's all it is 2 queen adjustable beds put next to each other. So we each have technically our own bed, and then if we want, we can stick them together for our snuggle sessions. But yeah, we have our own beds. I sleep on this bed, she sleeps on that bed. When she's not here, I still sleep on my side, she still sleeps on hers. So yeah, I think they're just like Tempur-Pedic, queen-sized beds and stands put together.
That's terrific. That's very creative, and what a great outcome that you guys are getting
Very
from
good.
that. That's awesome. Okay, now for fun, what's your best investment ever? The most fun you've had for, you know, something you can put money into, or a small amount of money, or some attention into, or some time, effort, and then yields the most fun.
UFC. I split it with a buddy. It's $40 for like 8 hours of entertainment on a Saturday. It's the best. I love it. I'm a huge. I don't even know if I want to go see the fights live anymore. I used to want to, and I've been to some, but I just feel like watching it on TV is the way to go. And for $40, I mean, it's 80, but we split it. I'm trying to be, you know, trying to be good with money. $40 for 7 or 8 hours of entertainment, you know, that's really good for me.
Money well spent.
100% every time. I never regret it.
Well, this has been amazing, Kevin. I really appreciate you so much. I appreciate your time and all your insights and the wonderful, you know, stories about your life that you've shared, and all the, you know, paths that you're going on, and the direction, you know, which involves a lot of, you know, respect for people and helping people, meeting them where they're at and uplifting them in their lives, as well as uplifting your own lives and the people that are close to you. I got so much out of this interview. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You're a wonderful host. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the curiosity, but most of all, I appreciate the human that you are. So I'm mirroring that love back to you, and I'm grateful we got to spend this time together.
All right. Well, take care, Kevin. Until next time.
You too, my friend.